There's orangutan in my bedroom and I don't know what to do. She plays with all my teddies and keeps borrowing my shoe. She destroys all of my houseplants and she keeps on shouting, ooh. She throws away my chocolate and she howls at my shampoo. There's orangutan in my bedroom and I don't want her to stay. So I told the naughty orangutan that she had to go away. Orangutan in my bedroom, just before you go, why were you in my bedroom? I really want to know. There's a human in my forest and I don't know what to do. He destroyed all of our trees for your food and your shampoo. There's a human in my forest and I don't know what to do. He took away my mother and I'm scared he'll take me too. There are humans in my forest and I don't know what to do. They're burning it for palm oil. So I thought I'd stay with you. Orangutan in my bedroom, now I do know what to do. I'll fight to save your home and I'll stop you feeling blue. I'll share your story far and wide so others can fight too. Orangutan in my bedroom, I swear it on the stars. The future's not yet written, but I'll make sure it is ours.
There now follows a party political gangster rap on behalf of the UK Independence Party. Hello, I'm Nigel Farage, also known as Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage, so step back Nicki Minaj. Cause I'm a wicked politician at large, with a vision of a Britain with no immigrant barges. Barging in, causing arguments and argy-bargy. The Falklands is ours, we barred it from the Argies. Don't mess with the UK Independence Party, cause we've a tendency to get nasty. Each time I gave a splendid speech, we gained momentum, speed, Faraging with a vengeance. We are in the ascendancy, a swing of the pendulum and we will gain a bench of seats. Unrepentantly pro-independency, my ideal ending seemed a never-ending referendum on foreign bureaucrats and where the heck they're gonna send them. Next on the agenda, bloody hell I can't remember, I'm too busy thinking of becoming an honourable member. I'm that friendly MEP, aiming for an MBE. The Lib Dems and the BNP, they envy me. They know what I'm gonna be, so they're poking fun at me. I've no fear, bring your smear, sling your mud at me. But bugger bringing in a single currency. What's the problem with the monetary system we've got currently? Great Britain is an excellent island, significantly better than Ireland. I learn not to be outnumbered by a bunch of Scots, cause they've a tendency to pile in and get violent. But I'm a man of great class, make you look a straight ass. I carry on my campaign straight after a plane crash. Tell these champagne socialists I'm here to gate crash. I'm Moet to your baby shaman, I can't wait to break glass. I dedicate this ungodly tune to an MEP gone too soon in memory of Godfrey Bloom. Rest in peace, Godfrey. What? I know he's not actually dead, but it's better than saying he was forced to leave for calling a group of women at the conference a bunch of sluts. Anyway, I digress. The point of the message that I'm trying to convey today is that voting for UKIP would be a splendid idea. The fighting bull strikes again. God save the Queen. Penelope Keith, Dennis the Menace, Roger the Dodger, Tintin. What? Tintin's Belgian? Why wasn't I informed of this? Why did nobody tell me that Tintin is Belgian? Get his literature out of my office now!
Damn bull. Duggleby.
New Labour alienated and made him marginalised. Pull hard on the ties, wouldn't be part of the lies. Man.
Questions. We'll turn now to First Minister's questions. Question number 1 from Jackson Carlow.
Thank you. Can I ask the First Minister, which plan delivers public spending in real terms over the coming years higher, the UK Government's budget plan or the SNP's Growth Commission?
First Minister.
Well, let me be very clear that as a result of the budget on Monday, the UK Government budget, the budget of the Scottish Government will be cut in real terms by almost £2 billion between the Tories coming to office in 2010 and the end of this decade, highlighting that austerity under the Tories is far from over. They continue to deliver tax cuts for the richest and just cuts for everybody else. By contrast, the Growth Commission recommends real terms increases in spending to protect our vital public services.
Jackson Carlo.
Well, if that's austerity, the First Minister is going to have to think of a new word to describe life under her miserable plans, because that's quite something. And whatever else that was, it wasn't an answer to the simple question I asked. On Sunday, Derek Mackay swaggered round the TV studio saying, "Show me the money." Well, on Monday, the Chancellor did. And what the First Minister won't admit is that the UK budget has now set a course for public spending to increase within the UK at 1.4% a year in real terms up to 2023-24, whereas the SNP's Growth Commission, their evangelical Bible of economic misery, forecast public spending in an independent Scotland to increase by just 0.5%. First Minister, those are the facts. So I ask you again, which plan proposes to increase spending by more in Scotland? The UK Government's bold proposals or the SNP's miserable Growth Commission?
First Minister.
Independence and control of our own resources, we can ensure real terms increase in public spending. That is the prize of independence. But let's go back to the budget and the reality of the UK Government Tory budget announced on Monday. That will result in cuts to the Scottish Government budget of £2 billion over the decade that the Tories have been in power. Most of the consequentials in next year, of course, are earmarked for the National Health Service. When that is taken out, and we will pass them on to the National Health Service, I should say, as an aside, the Tories have even managed to short changes on that. We were meant to get £600 million in consequentials next year. We're only seeing £550 million of that delivered. And if that shortfall continues over the planning period, that will see the Tories shortchange the Scottish people to the tune of more than £250 million. That is absolutely shameful. But, you know, if Jackson Carlo doesn't want to take my word for it, perhaps he can listen to the think tanks, and the experts have all had their say on the budget over the last few days. The Resolution Foundation is not the end of austerity. Existing promises of extra spending in some areas mean the Chancellor's numbers imply ongoing cuts in other day-to-day public services. So we know what the Tories stand for. The mask has well and truly slipped. It slipped before we even got to Halloween this year. Tax cuts for the wealthiest and cuts for everybody else. That's the reality of the Tories, and this government stands for something very different indeed.
Jackson Carlo.
How miserably predictable. Here's the reality. The Scottish Government will receive an extra £500 million more in real terms next year. That's what the independent Scottish parliamentary researchers SPICE have declared. And yet the SNP are so focused on finding the cloud in every silver lining, it can't even bring itself to welcome a single penny of that money, let alone £500 million of it. Worse still, the Finance Secretary has also indicated that he will refuse to pass on tax cuts which will benefit middle-income families elsewhere in the UK. Will the First Minister give any hope of tax relief to people like senior teachers, nurses and police officers who, without it, face paying a bill of £1,000 extra in income tax compared to those doing exactly the same job elsewhere in the UK? Will she?
First Minister.
However Jackson Carlo tries to spin it, the reality is cuts to this government's budget as a result of decisions taken by the Tory Chancellor. I've got the figures here. £2 billion over the decade is the real terms cut in the budget of this government. That amounts to almost 7% in real terms. The Tories should be utterly ashamed of that. But let me turn to tax. And, you know, we are, of course, seeing the true colours of the Tories really highlighted today. When we set our budget on the 12th of December, the decisions we take will be driven by our determination to protect our National Health Service and our other public services, to tackle poverty and low pay, and ensure that those who earn the most in our society make a fair and reasonable contribution to our public services. It will be a balanced, progressive and fair budget, and it will stand in stark contrast to the one that we saw on Monday. But let me look at tax in more detail. And I am really surprised that Jackson Carlaw is prepared to defend the reality of this. Again, let me cite the Resolution Foundation. So these are not Scottish Government figures. 84% of the benefit from the Tory tax cut for the richest goes to the top half of the income spectrum. 37% of that goes to the top 10% of income earners. And then, looking ahead, and I'm quoting here the Resolution Foundation, the overall impact of tax and benefit policies put in place by the Tory government since 2015 will, on average, make richer households better off by £390 a year and the poorest fifth of households £400 a year worse off. Shameful. That is absolutely damning and shameful. And I'd be really interested to hear if Jackson Carlaw is prepared to stand up and defend that.
Jackson Carlaw.
Well, I'll tell you something. Audit Scotland's not very impressed with your efforts to protect the NHS because they think its current forecast is completely unsustainable. And what we get from the First Minister really is the usual basket of cliches. This was a budget which froze fuel duty and delivered a tax cut of £132 to the record number of Scots in work. It delivered a freeze on the duty on whisky, welcomed by the industry. Help for the oil and gas sector, welcomed by those in it. More than £500 million for Scotland's NHS. Help for our high streets, investment in our roads. And the SNP response? An all too predictable whinge. How tired, lacklustre and miserable. They wanted a freeze in whisky duty, they got it. They wanted support for oil and gas, they got it. They wanted to see the money, they got £950 million worth of it. If ever Scotland wanted evidence that this is a grudge and grievance government led by a grudge and grievance First Minister, this was it. Why can't she for once, just once, First Minister, welcome it?
First Minister.
Well, isn't it interesting, and isn't it very, very illuminating, that when I quoted the Resolution Foundation about how the Tories are cutting tax for the richest in our society while continuing to punish the poor, and asked Jackson Carlaw to have a go at defending that, he just changed the subject. I think lots of people will have listened to Jackson Carlaw today and realised that he is completely unable to defend the policies of his own party at Westminster. Let's turn back to the NHS and tax. Firstly, let us not forget, of course, that as a result of our budget decisions last year, 55% of taxpayers in Scotland right now pay less tax than counterparts across the UK because of our new starter rate, not helping those at the top, helping those at the bottom of the income scale. That's a progressive change. And when it comes to the NHS, for weeks now, the Tories have been challenging the Scottish Government to say what we're going to do with the £600 million of consequentials that we were going to get in this budget for the health service. Now, we will pass on every penny of consequentials for the health service to the health service. But interestingly, it's not £600 million that's been delivered. It's only £550, and that will cost. And that will cost Scottish people more than £250 million over the period. But my final point, Presiding Officer, and the Tories might want to listen to this, because that figure of £550 million has another significance, does it not? Because that's also the figure that would have been taken out of the Scottish budget if we'd followed Tory calls to cut tax for the richest in this financial year. That would have been the equivalent of taking 13,000 nurses out of our health service. So this government stands for public services. It stands for helping the poorest in our society. It stands for fairness and progressive principles. And what we've seen today is that the Tories stand for tax cuts for the rich and just cuts for everybody else. And Jackson Carlaw can't even try to defend it. Utterly shameful.
Doris, to be followed by Neil Findlay. Mr Doris, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. This debate on universal credit is vitally important, although the matters we must discuss this afternoon are deeply unwelcome. Universal credit sits at the heart of a UK welfare reform agenda, in reality a cuts agenda which will remove around £3.7 billion from social security spending in Scotland by 2021. This is not simply numbers on a budget line, but rather cuts pushing families below the breadline, and it's simply unacceptable. Let me say from the outset, I believe universal credit is an ideologically driven endeavour by the Conservatives, an endeavour which is deliberately punitive and will inflict harm on some of the most vulnerable people in our society. There are many aspects of universal credit which I would consider cruel and unreasonable. However, what really gives the game away is the at least 5-week wait before a new claimant can receive any cash that they are entitled to. The system is deliberately designed to ensure those most in need are left waiting without funds. That minimum 5-week wait. Indeed, the National Audit Office in its 2018 report stated that in 2017, around one quarter, that's 113,000 of new claims, were not paid in full on time. Late payments were delayed on average by 4 weeks. Staggeringly, from January to October last year, 40% of those affected by late payments waited a total of around 11 weeks or more. As for this year, as universal credit rolls out across my city in Glasgow right now, the National Audit Office estimates that up to 338,000 new claimants will not be paid in full at the end of their first assessment period throughout 2018. That's the reality. That means many of my constituents who are already being told by a new and harsh universal credit to wait 5 weeks before they even get a single penny they're entitled to still won't get the money. Let me make some progress, Mr Tompkins, still won't get the money after that 5-week wait. Now, I would note that an advance payment can, in certain circumstances, be provided by the DWP, but it's actually in reality a loan that must be paid back. Often claimants are not aware of that potential advance. When people inquire, they are asked if they can borrow money from family or friends, or if there's any other sources by which they can get money. They're actually asked that when they ask about it. What a question to ask one of my constituents. Delay them and deny them their cash to a vulnerable family, and then suggest they lean on others who may very well also be experiencing poverty themselves. Additionally, some of the other sources of income in our community charge eye-watering levels of interest. Are we actually asking unemployed people having delayed their benefits to seek a payday loan when they're out of work? Worse still, I can assure you there are some very unsavoury people out there that some of our constituents could ask for advances on money when they're desperate, if they've been advised by the DWP to go to other sources before getting anything from them. 40% of claimants who have to wait at least 5 weeks do not receive an advance loan for universal credit. Some may have personal funds, or have family members who can assist and can afford to assist. But I worry about where the others are turning to. I want to make progress, Mr Tompkins. I've probably heard enough of you, to be fair. They have to go to elsewhere to survive, and I'm worried about where they're going. Universal credit is currently constructed as a cruel system for many, deliberately delivering indebtedness by design. Now, I grew up in the 1980s where a Provi cheque was how you paid for birthdays in my house, and a catalogue was how you paid by Christmas, but you got your benefits. And now some of my constituents will go for Provi cheques, they will go for the catalogues, and they won't have their benefits either. It's a ridiculous and it's an inhumane system. And we know the reality for too many individuals and families out there, with a 15% increase in food bank use in Scotland in the 5 months to September this year, due to the inbuilt minimum wait of 5 weeks. The Trussell Trust have also said that when universal credit goes live in an area, there's a demonstrable increase in demand for local food banks. On average, 12 months after the rollout of universal credit, food banks see a 52% increase in demand. On Friday of last week, I held a universal credit information event in Postle Park in my constituency. And my thanks to Glasgow North West Citizens Advice, to NG Homes for their support, to Councillors Gow and McLaren for attending, and to Postle Point Community Centre for hosting us. It is one of 5 events I have held to date, and I have worked in partnership with Citizens Advice, local housing associations and Patrick Grady MP, as well as the local councillors. And I want to mention a number of the concerns raised at these events, as they illustrate some of the other deep flaws within the universal credit system. Those offering support at the information events I have attended have witnessed firsthand how individuals or groups with poor literacy skills, low or non-existent IT skills, limited or no access to computers, lack of affordability of broadband have often been left high and dry due to the digital by default aspects of making a claim for benefits or maintaining an online journal evidencing their attempts to seek work. Inclusion Scotland indeed talks about the targeting of disabled people within this, where 35% of them have no access to the internet at all. 10% is the figure more generally across the country. This is cruel, it's inhumane and it's by design. Why not abolish sanctions? They are quite frankly counterproductive. The PCS union, who have to administer this system, want sanctions abolished, and don't make my constituents who are vulnerable wait 5 weeks. This can change and we must change it.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Here in Brussels, outside the European Parliament, and you can see lots of flags behind me. A huge building here with all the members of the European Parliament sit. I've been having a lot of conversations today and yesterday about the role of the UK, the future relationship with the EU, and what the impact of Brexit is on the rest of the EU, and on our communities, and our services, and on our people. And that is going to be a huge impact. We've seen the pride here, we can feel the pride here of the future with our European neighbours and the European Union member states, the countries that we have been shared partnership for so many years. We're about to lose all that. We're about to lose our European Union citizenship. We don't want that. Our children don't want that. We need to find a way through. We need to find a way out of that, and that is not Theresa May's blindfold Brexit or a bad deal or a no deal.
Talk about a pre-match morale boost. Joe Johnson's resignation message came on the eve of today's Brexit or Bust conference by the anti-EU Bruges Group, held at a club in London's West End.
We've been trying to tell Number 10 privately for months, really trying, that there's no way Chequers would get through the House of Commons because it doesn't have the support. But unfortunately, they've simply not been listening to advice. Well, here is something, that you can't ignore. This really is a kind of wet kipper in the face moment.
But he denied, as many here will do, that it brings any second referendum any nearer. Here they say, like Downing Street, the people have spoken and that is that. So who would have thought it, and remarkably from the Johnson clan of all places, a resignation message which commends itself to both sides of the great Brexit argument, Remainers and Brexiteers alike, saying, yes, we can subscribe to the idea that the worst of all worlds is being a bit in and a bit out of the Union. Plainly, Johnson Jr.'s valedictory assault yesterday on his boss's big idea warms the hearts of his fellow Remainers, as well as that of big brother Brexiteer Johnson Sr. Fellow Remainers like Philip Lee MP.
I don't think any of my Conservative colleagues want to bring down the government, but what they are concerned about is the national interest. They're putting their country first, and they can see that where we've arrived with regards to this Brexit arrangement is not what the Brexit voters voted for in 2016, let alone obviously the Remain voters.
So he says a second referendum is a no-brainer. Some Remainers clearly pulling the plug on the PM's plan. But what of the government's life support machine itself, the Democratic Unionists? They want reassurance, but say they're getting just more anxiety. Their party leader wrote today,
"Last week I wrote to the Prime Minister outlining broad concerns about the direction of travel. I wrote in the hope of reassurance and with the desire that an acceptable deal for us all was within grasp. Instead, I received confirmation that we were right to be concerned."
Away from it all in many ways, Jeremy Corbyn in North Yorkshire today, sampling the delights of Saltburn's funicular railway. For now, does he really have to do much more than simply watch the governmental car crash?
We are determined that we will hold them to account so that we can have a government in Britain that's serious about fairness and investment across the whole piece. Chequers doesn't do any of that. After all, most of the Cabinet don't agree with Chequers. 7 ministers have already resigned over Chequers, and we've got 2 Johnsons at war with each other.
We will be subject to the EU regulations.
But what's this? Back down in London's clubland, even the Bruges Group are having their problems, ejecting a vociferous gentleman who'd taken the floor to attack them over their position on defence. Fractures and divisions wherever you look.
Alex Thompson there with that report. I'm joined now by the Conservative MP Chris Philp, who is in Croydon. Thank you for standing out in the rain. Now, Joe Johnson, who was resigned yesterday, is normally a man with whom you agree. So when he says that Theresa May's Brexit is a choice between being a vassal state in which we obey European rules and don't have a say in them, and chaos, why is he suddenly wrong?
Well, I think, Joe is a very nice and a very thoughtful man who I admire and respect, but I think he's been premature because the deal is still under negotiation. We don't know the exact form it's going to take, and we're probably not going to know for another number of 2 or 3 weeks, who knows? So I think his resignation is premature, and what he should have done, and what anyone thinking about this should do, is wait and see what the deal looks like, scrutinise it carefully when it's published, and then decide if you want to support it or not. Because to resign before it's even been negotiated is extremely, as I say, it's extremely premature.
But we know that what is being taken is a single market on goods in which we effectively obey European rules on goods with which we do not have a say, and that the fallback position is likely to be the UK staying in the customs union. So these are things that we would be obeying but not having any control over. That's what he means by vassalage. Why is that wrong?
So if you're talking about the backstop, I think you are, that is intended to be a temporary arrangement if there's a gap, if there's a lacuna between the end of the transition period and the start of our future trading relationship, and which may be a Canada-style free trade agreement, it may be more like the Chequers agreement, we'll find out. But the point is that the backstop, if indeed it's ever invoked at all, it can't be something which continues in perpetuity. The Prime Minister has been extremely clear, repeatedly, in public, in private, in the House of Commons, in the media, with the European negotiators, that we can't have a situation where the United Kingdom, or indeed any part of it, gets stuck in a backstop of the kind you're describing with no way out. That is not something the Prime Minister is going to negotiate or agree to, and I don't think Parliament would agree to it either. So the situation you're describing, if it ever happened, would be temporary, and it would be within our power to leave it.
Well, the trouble is, you can say whatever you want, but it's not necessarily within our power in a legal agreement. Now, if we get to the point where this deal is voted down, what should the Prime Minister do?
Well, I think you're getting a bit ahead of ourselves because the deal hasn't even been negotiated yet.
Well, it's not looking good, is it?
Still less been voted down.
The DUP are against it, Labour's against it, the ERG in the Conservative Party are against it, the Remainers in the Conservative Party are against it. It's not looking like it's going to get through, to be honest, is it?
Well, I admire your attempt to draw me on something, speculating about something which has not even been agreed yet. It's still being negotiated, and as far as sort of my energy and efforts are concerned as a backbench Member of Parliament, what I'm doing is trying to offer the government, suggestions and offer them my comments. For example, I'm very keen to make sure that there's a way of linking this £39 billion exit payment to the future state trade deal, whatever form that takes. So, I'm sort of offering my ideas. It's way premature to think about, what may happen if the deal gets voted down. It hasn't even been agreed yet. What we should all be doing, those of us with the national interest at heart, is supporting the Prime Minister in doing this very difficult negotiation.
What's the plan B?
And the Labour Party have come out and said, well, hang on, the Labour Party have come out and pretty much said they're going to vote against this deal no matter what it contains, and that is extremely irresponsible. What they should be doing, if they're a responsible opposition with the national interest at heart, is saying that they'll look at it and make a decision when it comes out. But they're not saying that. They're saying they'll vote against it no matter what, and that is irresponsible.
Chris Philp, thank you very much indeed. I don't think that's quite how Labour would characterise their position, but we'll let them speak for themselves.
A Sinn Féin rally in the border town of Castleblaney to support the party's candidate in the Irish presidential election. Sinn Féin want a united Ireland and fear that a physical border could reappear on this island if the UK crashes out of the EU.
It is a reckless scenario. It will raise a question mark over the peace agreements and the peace infrastructure that we have so painstakingly built over decades. It's a matter of astonishment to me that the British establishment can be so utterly thoughtless and perhaps even malicious.
In 1972 in Newry, an IRA bomb at a customs post like this one killed 9 people. At the EU summit, the Irish Prime Minister showed this Irish Times interview with the daughter of one of the customs officers killed to European leaders. A reminder that peace remains fragile.
I don't think any of the politicians have any idea what the border's about, really. Somebody goes out to work that morning and they come back in a
coffin,
plastic bag.
Not everyone living in the border area fears Brexit. Ulster Unionist councillor David Taylor is loyal to the British Crown.
The comments made by the Irish Prime Minister in relation to the possibility of violence were both irresponsible and deeply unfortunate. In my opinion, it should not be used as any way to gain leverage or advantage as part of the ongoing Brexit negotiations.
In Ireland, the border is not just about customs or economics, but about identity, being Irish, being British. These questions were more or less solved by the signing of the Good Friday Agreement 20 years ago, but Brexit brought them back to the surface.
From a politician with a reputation for understatement and loyalty came an explosive intervention, quitting as Transport Minister and calling for a second Brexit referendum in the same breath.
It's a very difficult decision, but we're clearly barrelling towards an incoherent Brexit that is going to see us cede control. The referendum was meant to be about taking back control, but in fact the only people who are going to gain control are the French Parliament and the German Parliament. It's certainly not our own Parliament in this process. At present, the deal is incoherent on its own terms, and that's why it's so important for the public to have a say, so it can confirm that this is really the Brexit that it wants.
The initial announcement made via social media, a blow apparently out of the blue for Theresa May.
I have had no choice but to submit my resignation to the Prime Minister this afternoon.
The resignation was backed by Brexiteers, including his brother, the former Foreign Secretary, who wrote on Twitter, "Boundless admiration as ever for my brother Joe. We may not have agreed about Brexit, but we are united in dismay at the intellectually and politically indefensible UK position." This was not a Brexiteer resignation. Joe Johnson voted for Remain, but as Transport Minister was involved in no-deal planning to protect ports and trade flows. Conclusion that a no-deal Brexit would inflict what he described as untold damage on the nation, with real questions about whether the government would be able to guarantee access to fresh food and medicine. For a Prime Minister who insists the choice that will face MPs is between her deal or no deal, this could prove a devastating assessment.
In a statement, Downing Street thanked Joe Johnson for his work in government, but hit back at his call for a second referendum, saying that the vote in 2016 was the biggest democratic exercise in the country's history, and a second one wouldn't be held under any circumstances.
But organisers from the People's Vote campaign see this as a major moment, with sources telling Sky News they are speaking to other ministers also considering their positions, and are hopeful more resignations could follow. It comes as relations soured further between Theresa May and the DUP. Party leader Arlene Foster accusing the Prime Minister of breaking promises, saying the deal on the table could see Northern Ireland left in the EU's customs union, and telling Sky News that the DUP's backing of Mrs May's leadership was not to be taken for granted.
It is important that we remember that the confidence and supply agreement is with the Conservative Party. And we did that because we wanted to ensure that we had that stability at Westminster, and that's still our desire.
In an effort to reassure the party on whose support Theresa May relies for her majority, her de facto Deputy Prime Minister said this.
The Prime Minister's always been very clear that, we won't accept something that involves sort of carving out Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom.
But if the government cannot reassure its own ministers of the wisdom of its Brexit strategy, it doesn't bode well for Theresa May's efforts to pull together a deal that both Brussels and Parliament could back.
this on your media channel. Stop making Nigel Farage some kind of cartoon. He is a dangerous influence on impressionable people in this country. He doesn't represent anybody's rights. He doesn't represent anybody's future. He represents a past that this country could do without.
Our goal is simple: a fairer country for all those born here, for those who have chosen to make this their home, and for the generations yet to come. That is why we believe in an independent Scotland. So know this, believe in this, work for this. Hope is possible. A better future is within our grasp, and together we are going to make it happen.
Well, I grew up in a Scotland where the decisions about our future are taken by the people who care most about Scotland, the people who live here.
gone. I had a missing heart, someone saw it. Could you call me back? It's broke but it's still bleeding. I found a trail of blood to Wisconsin. Could you call me back? I can't go up there and get it myself. I'm asking for your help. So, hello, Mr. Policeman, call me back.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio ICE.
Next we have Scarlett Halton, Littlefinger.
I wake up in the morning, but before I brush my teeth, I think of you. I think of you. I get up off my bed, but before I change the sheets, I think of you. I think of you. Out of sight, out of mind, what they say. But every day I seem to fall behind in this game you play. You say you'll never hurt me, but it's driving me insane, because I just can't seem to cease this pain. You've got me wrapped around your little finger, and I can't see through your hazel eyes, and I'm endlessly trying to find an answer, but it's too late now, 'cause I'm in love with your disguise and its lies. I go out on a Friday night, but all that's on my mind's the way you move, the way you move. I fill my thoughts with nothing but the desperate hope that I'm the one you choose, the one you choose. Out of sight, out of mind, what they say. But every day I seem to fall behind in this game you play. You say you'll never hurt me, but it's driving me insane, 'cause I just can't seem to cease this pain. You've got me wrapped around your little finger, and I can't see through your hazel eyes, and I'm endlessly trying to find an answer, but it's too late now, 'cause I'm in love with your disguise and its lies. You've got me wrapped around your little finger, and I can't see through your hazel eyes, and I'm endlessly trying to find an answer, but it's too late now, 'cause I'm in love with your disguise. Oh, you've got me wrapped around your little finger, and I can't see through your hazel eyes, and I'm endlessly trying to find an answer, but it's too late now, 'cause I'm in love with your disguise and its lies. You had me wrapped around your little finger, but now I see through your hazel eyes, and I finally found an answer, and I'm no longer in love with your disguise and its lies.
Now playing. Redneck Surfers, Rules of the Game.
Life is a sick joke, but it isn't funny at all. At least I'm not immune. One taste too messy, how many? Nothing to lose, but everything to gain. If you don't try it, you'll never know. Later on, when, where, or how, change the rule of the game. Life isn't what you spend. Nothing is what isn't to be. Try in your life. It's not enough. It's not enough. Nothing to lose, but everything to gain. If you don't try it, you'll never know. Later on, when, where, or how, change the rule of the game. You'll sign the contract, you'll save your soul. Dare you to die, will turn that and close. You got think this, feel those, fuck you. Born, work, eat, fuck, shit, sleep and die. Nothing to lose, but everything to gain. If you don't try it, you'll never know. Later on, when, where, or how, change the rule of the game.
Now playing. From the free public domain, Jethro on the Run. Next up is Brielle Rafton and Colin Jeffries, Come Close.
When I say my everything, it means all that I want, all that I need. I can't believe that. So bring hope and let's spread like fire. Burn what's dead and plant new desires in us. You're all that we have. So only you bring healing in our pain. Only you make new life out of pain. Only you are worthy of our praise. So you can have it all. God, come close. Give us a passion. Give us a grace we can't produce. God, you spoke that lame into action. So we stand and waiting for you. When my words start to make a sound, I hit my tongue and hit the ground. Oh God, will you be our voices? Nothing less and nothing more than you, my King, living for please God. Be our voices. Only you bring healing in my pain. Only you make new life out of rain. Only you are worthy of our praise. So you can have it all. Yeah. So God, come close. Give us a passion. Give us the grace we can't produce. God, you spoke and lame into action. So we stand and waiting for you. Overwhelm our souls, overtake our homes. Would you overcome our pain? Overwhelm our souls, overtake our homes. Would you overcome our pain? Overwhelm our souls, overtake our homes. Would you overcome our pain? Overwhelm our souls, overtake our homes. Would you overcome our pain? God, come close. Give us a passion.
come close.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland, Channel Radio ICE.
Now playing. Brielle Rathbun and Colin Jeffries, Disappear.
There's not much life inside these girls' dead body. No, I don't wanna be real. Not gonna stop me, 'cause it's not yours, it's mine, and I want it clear. Now I don't need a hero to swoop down and save me. I like it best when I am alive. When I'm empty, it only hurts me when I close my eyes. So I'm just gonna cry, cry, cry until my eyes fall out, 'cause that's what the best of them do. And I don't even know what I'm talking about. All I know is that I want to disappear. Disappear. Oh, I wanna disappear. Oh, yeah, yeah. I wanna disappear. Going back and forth is a heck of a trial. I've done it all before, but after a while, every ounce of pain comes all at once. So I'm just gonna cry, cry, cry until my eyes fall out, 'cause it's what the best of them do. And I don't even know what I'm talking about. All I know is that I want to disappear. Disappear. Oh, I wanna disappear. Oh, yeah. I wanna disappear. I wanna disappear. Take this heart for what it is. These broken bones, do you argue? It's all I've got, but it's yours. Take this heart for what it is. These broken bones, do you argue? It's all I've got, but it's yours. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So take this heart for what it is. These broken bones, do you argue? It's all I've got, but it's yours. So take this heart for what it is. These gonna cry, cry, cry until my eyes fall out, 'cause it's when the best of you, and I don't even know what I'm talking about. All I know is that I want to just cry, cry, cry until my eyes fall out, 'cause it's when the best of you, and I don't even know what I'm talking about. All I know is that I want to cry, cry, cry until my eyes fall out. Oh, this way, the best of you, and I don't even know what I'm talking about. All I know is that I want to disappear you, disappear you. This way, the best of you, what I'm talking about. All I know is that I want to. So I'm just gonna fly, fly, fly into these wings, get out. Then from there, I'm relying on you. Fly, fly, fly into these wings, get out. Then from there, I'm relying on you.
Next we have Shane Ivers, Higher Up. Now playing. Color Out, Falling Star.
Someday you'll come back here, and you'll open up your arms, and you'll laugh and say, I knew it wouldn't take you long to realize I was gone. And it's only been 3 years, but to me it's been so long. And I remember it like yesterday. Oh, you could say I've been holding on, and I waited all of my life for you to make it right, but the time is come and gone, and it's faded and lost all its light. A star that shines so bright falls from the sky. Don't make you wish that won't come true, and I learned that from you such a long time ago. When you left, you said you had to find a better way of life. This one just wouldn't do, and I waited all of my life for you to take your time to find your place. But I learned that this world still turns without you, and you were just a phase, and I learned without you here I was happier alone than I ever would have known.
Next we have Hidden Lion.
Everything seems to be wrong. Has it been this all along? Give it back, she said, you know what you stole from me, my little piece of mind. Things aren't always really as they seem. We must understand. The girl is crying, there's nowhere to hide. There's no denying this great divide. There's no use trying. is the heart of a lion. Working harder every day to make the demons go away. Things aren't always really as they seem. We must understand. The girl is crying, there's nowhere to hide. There's no denying this great divide. There's no use trying, she's running out of time. And she's still crying, but deep down inside is the heart of a lion. The girl is crying, there's nowhere to hide. There's no denying this great divide. There's no use trying, she's running out of time. And she's still crying, but deep down inside is the heart of a lion.
The coolest radio station in the world, Radio Ice, from Independent TV and Radio Scotland.
Now playing Cordes Sheets.
Tensions rise in fear. Put it there, put it there, put it there, put it there. In the air, don't be scared, don't be scared, don't be scared. Be aware, be aware, be aware. Feels that we can't bear. It's a love just as thin as these sheets. An action that don't mean a thing. A love just as thin as these sheets. A love just as thin as these sheets. A love just as thin as these sheets. It's just a fuck for tonight, dear. Just a love that is thin as the sheets. An action that don't mean a thing. A passion that ain't what it seems. And I feel you wonder. Last night ruined this moment, 'cause real life doesn't exist. Just a love that's as thin as the sheets. An action that don't mean a thing. A passion that ain't what it seems. A love just as thin as the sheets. Just a love that's as thin as the sheets. An action that don't mean a thing. A passion that ain't what it seems. A love just as thin as the sheets. Just a love that's as thin as the sheets. Feel you under. And I feel you under.
Next we have Color Out K.
Let me know how you really feel. Emotions aside, let me in, 'cause I can't reach your mind this time. This time. But don't hide away. I know it's easier to run from your mistakes all on your own. And all I wanna hear are the words fall from your throat. I can't blame you now, falling down while the world keeps spinning on without me now. Have your doubts, keep your head above the clouds. It's always been the same way. It's always been afraid to change. You're losing track of where you started, following your footsteps to retrace missteps and wrong directions, feeling lost in places you once felt so safe, so safe. But don't hide away. I know it's easier to run when you're afraid, all on your own. And all I wanna hear are the words fall from your throat. I can't blame you now, falling down while the world keeps spinning on without me now. Have your doubts, but keep your head above the clouds. It's always been the same way. It's always been afraid But I can't blame you now, falling down while the world keeps spinning on without me now. Have your doubts, keep your head above the clouds. And okay, and it's okay, okay, and it's okay.
Track playing now. Axel Antunes, Nature World.
They I want to surrender. That's the danger of living inside of a cage. Everybody's just a stranger to the nature world. Maybe you think you are free, sunny California, but baby, wake up. We live under fire, we don't have a home. Everybody else is getting all it wrong. We live in the fire, we don't have a home. I remember that's the danger. Now love is behind everything. It's a shame to see, never forget about the nature world. Oh, maybe you think you are rich on your private beach. Oh, baby, wake up. We live in the fire, we don't have a home. Everybody else is getting all it wrong. We live in the fire, we don't have a home. It's hard to see, it's misunderstood. We've never had a clue of harmony. We live in the fire, we don't have a home. Everybody else is getting all it wrong. We live in the fire, we don't have a home. In the nature world, standing off the nature world.
I can't see the light no more, and I don't want to.
Now playing. Brianna Grace, Can't See the Light.
Could it be my monsters, demon lovers that rub me all the wrong ways? Can you get me high tonight? Chemicals inside, rush me down, rush me down. Going out of my mind, criminal limelight, down. I can't see the light no more, and I don't want to. Put my heart back on the floor, don't come to my rescue. I'm right where I should be, every part of me reaching its satisfaction. I can't see the light no more, and I don't want to. Making me your vessel, turn me into vengeful. Crazy ain't got nothing on me. When you hear a rumble from deep inside the jungle, better find some sanctuary. Cause I'm getting high tonight, chemicals inside, rushing me down, down. Blowing out the dark side, howling at the moonlight. I can't see the light no more, and I don't want to. Put my heart back on the floor, don't come to my rescue. I'm right where I should be, every part of me reaching its satisfaction. deserves anyone or anything. Even though I'm standing on the edge with all my questions, at least I realize I can't see the light no more, and I don't want to.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio ICE.
Now playing. Sammy Bauer, Dorothy Gale.
Yeah, how's it been since you left? How's it been since you rest? Been given all the time again, just to see you knocking back. Oh, you ain't with it. You said you finished. You been talking around, telling your boys they ain't got nothing to worry about. Oh, where I'm going's unknown. Steady feeling so. Only hear when they say no. Doubtful that the outcome. Been pushed out the way before, out the door, leaving with the keys to the car. Need to be on the road to ride and let it tomorrow. I'm out, girl. I'm out, girl. Somewhere, Dorothy Gale, over the rainbow, skies are blue. Dorothy Gale, beyond the moon, beyond the rain. Lost and gone, I ran away from home. See, we're not in Kansas anymore. My own white shoes turning red rose. We can walk this path to pure gold. From all the stars in the sky, you caught more than my eye. My hourglass of red velvet, our time slipped in an instant. Over hills, over fields, over till the sunrise. Got a brain and heart, I'll save. Courage of a saint I cannot explain. But things change, just tell me who's to blame. So hard to say goodbye. Don't cry, don't cry. I gave you my time. This playback rewind. Let me close my eyes. I pray that we'll get back. I pray that we'll get back. Oh, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. Somewhere, Dorothy Gale, over the rainbow, skies are blue. Dorothy Gale, beyond the moon, beyond the rain. I want more than what you've been giving me. I want more than what you've been telling me. I want more than what you've been giving me, from what you've been telling me. You go, snowfall. This field of love has you sleeping all of this time. Remarkable, divine. My God, tell me why. Shed some light on a side. We can back up in the crib now. Feel a little different in my way now. Out the way already on my list now. Mr. Old Me, should've stayed loyal. Got a frame of our time on my bedside. Got a foot on the pedal going overdrive. Stole your Lambo, hitting hundo. Let me make sure that the wings spread when I let go. Somewhere, Dorothy Gale, beyond the moon, beyond the rain.
Next up is Steve Blackley, Centerfold Machine.
Well, did you ever open a magazine to the centerfold and find your dream? Her skin looks smooth like a new-formed pearl, completely exposed like a fantasy girl. Wearing pieces of leather and fringe, so loosely draped to her tight rear end. Her tapered legs were smooth and long, and ever so sexy in chrome nylon. She is the ultimate dream, an absolute paperback queen, outrageous beyond obscene. She's a motorcycle, a centerfold machine. Close-ups of her big twin jugs, the kind of tall fin that you love to rub. She had a soft tail, yet firm as it gets, the kind that's built for comfort and just the right fit. So you remove the centerfold and careful it don't tear. You tack it to your wall and then you stand back and stare. You make yourself a promise, someday you'll have your own. Grab your Levi's by the crotch and make that one team grow. She is the ultimate dream, an absolute paperback queen, outrageous beyond obscene. She's a motorcycle, a centerfold machine. The leather and fringe, so loosely draped to her tight rear end. Her tapered legs were smooth and long, and ever so sexy in chrome nylon. She is the ultimate dream, an absolute paperback queen, outrageous beyond obscene. She's a motorcycle, motorcycle, a centerfold machine.
Playing now, Ino Toivonen, Piano Paprick. Now playing. Brianna Grace, Natural Disaster.
The ground beneath my feet is barely holding me. The smoke settling and I can finally see. I look at the debris, the scattered parts of me. Your wake is leaving a World War III. Where do you get off being happy? Feeding on everything you're destroying. Caught in your hurricane. Get off being happy.